What do you get when a wedding planner ends up in a remote Alaskan town and falls in love with its Christmas pageantry, as well as the local man helping her find a real rare flower? You get the first premiere of the Hallmark Christmas holiday season movies, Jingle Bell Bride, and we're going to dissect it here on the Hallmark 2020 After Show podcast. My name is Will Carey. You might know me from stand-up comedy and my other podcasts, Between Awesome and Disaster. My co-host for the first time ever is my lovely and darling wife of not even 2 months, Chelsea Connor.
Hello, everybody. How are you out there in listener land?
Hey, sweetie. How's it going?
Oh, it's good. You know, we've just watched the premiere movie of the Hallmark Christmas 2020 season, and I'd be remiss if I didn't note that there is one Hanukkah movie this year. We're really excited about it, but by and large, it's the Christmas show. Let's be honest.
Yeah, because as we all know with Hallmark, Jesus Jesus is king, but they've gotten a little,
We?
Well, that's what I've decided Hallmark thinks, but in keeping with the times, because I feel like the Hallmark movies, I feel like they're now a part of pop culture now, whereas when I was a kid they would have been like, oh, those are like just made for TV, like, who wants to watch that? But now they're like popular. They're like a known
I guess
thing.
so. I mean, we didn't really have cable growing up until I was much older, and so Hallmark movies are still a relatively new thing for me. But I'm excited to get to reviewing them all, and maybe we should tell our lovely listeners what our plan is for this year.
Yes. So to those of you who are listening, there are how many new Hallmark original Christmas movies or holiday movies are premiering this year, dear?
There's going to be 22 movies, and my Facebook feed would have you think that this is the most important thing happening in the world, other than a global pandemic.
And I'm going to say a live or die presidential election coming up.
Oh, right,
week.
That's happening too.
That too. But on this show, we're discussing holidays, the holidays and film and Hallmark, because you need joy in this house, and we are transferring that joy to the internet for the listener.
Yes, we are indeed. Exactly.
Yes. And I'm looking forward to this, because if you've downloaded this, you've seen the podcast artwork where Chelsea has photoshopped my head onto the Grinch's body, because I feel like you think that I'm some sort of like grumpy pants about Hallmark movies. I like feel good movies too, love.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's less that you're grumpy pants about Hallmark movies specifically. I just think as a genre, you're not into the rom-com. I think the plot seems to be too simple for you at times, and you're just not engaged, mostly because you're on your phone the whole time. And so that's more or less what I've decided, and I've decided I'm going to bring holiday cheer and joy to our household this year and to listeners just like you.
Well, I will let you know that I've come around to the feel good, because as I've gotten older and life has brought me like, times of great sorrow and angst. I also like to see things work out on occasion. And this movie is and Jingle Bell Bride, our first film of the season, is a movie where everything works out. But do we have a lot of unnecessary obstacles in our way to getting there? So
many obstacles.
So if as I said briefly in the introduction, so we have a wedding planner.
Wait, time out. For those listening who have not seen the movie, spoiler alert, do not listen any further.
I don't think we actually needed to do that, but
we do, because there are people who are passionate about seeing them. I'm sure there's lots of you out there who have them on your DVRs who maybe had other plans this weekend. For example, it was my birthday this weekend, and I decided to watch another movie with my mother. So I really just don't want to spoil the plot for you. So if you have not seen it yet and you're hoping to, do not listen any further. There's an urgent warning.
Exactly. I like your gusto, dear. So so this movie starts with, I feel like, something that would with a character that I feel like you would relate to. Our main character, Jessica, is a busy New York City career woman. She's a wedding planner, planning a wedding that I think is taking place on Christmas Eve. And my first thought on that is, who gets married on Christmas Eve? Like, what kind of self-involved narcissist does that?
Well, it's clear to me that you've not seen the prior seasons of the Hallmark movies, because almost every season there's a Christmas wedding movie. In fact, I think there's a movie called The Christmas Wedding. But I can not only relate to this human, Jessica, as we are introduced to her as early on, because she's like a type A, super intense person.
Right.
But she's also in the middle of planning this wedding. And for those of you who don't know, Will and I's beautiful wedding was
ruined.
Just, side slapped by
just katana
COVID.
right through our entire plans.
And so, I can totally relate to the idea that you would want a specific flower on your wedding day, which is where this really starts. So we've got a very fancy, famous bride who's a singer, pop culture singer, who really wants the Jingle Bell flower to be in her bouquet and on boutonnieres and in an arch and on a head table decoration, among many other places. And of course, this specific flower, as anyone who's ever planned a wedding knows, is not available for this time of year, because who grows flowers on December?
Exactly. And on such short notice, because the original bouquet was being flown in from like the side of a volcano. And then the bride changes her mind with 2 weeks to go. So this is a major hurdle that's been thrown in the way. And the only place that you can find this flower is in a small town in rural Alaska. Now, I love this setup because there is, and maybe you can think of the name of it, there's a Netflix show that has a similar busy career woman moves from like a big major city.
Virgin River.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It reminded me of that.
Or like Everwood. Do people remember the show Everwood from the CW?
I think someone listening
idea.
probably remembers Everwood. So we have this very, very constantly busy, constantly in motion type A woman who rushes off to Alaska because we can't put anything to chance with these flowers not showing up in time for this Christmas Eve wedding.
Yeah. But, I think that's less the point of it. It's more like we've magically propelled her, 6,000 miles away across the other side of the country to a tiny, tiny town in Alaska, in which she's taken arguably 3 or 4 flights from New York to get there. And of course
but still looks as good as when she left.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, ladies, I travel a lot for work, and I need a lot to make myself look decent. And the fact that she's traveled with her tiny roller suitcase and intends to just fly back to New York the same day, wholly unrealistic. But she arrives in this airport and is like expecting a chauffeur to show up for her
with like the name on the card that you might see in JFK. And first off, she meets the person giving her a ride, but she doesn't know it. She just walks right past him.
And I'm gonna have to stop you there, Will, especially given the times that we're in, 2020. I mean, a lot of people are aware and are participating in the Black Lives Matter movement, and immediately Hallmark hits you over the head with it. The man who's come to pick her up is a black man who presumably lives in this town and has been part of growing this special Jingle Bell flower for many, many generations. But we don't really address it. We just sort of have her sidestep the issue entirely by saying, oh, I was expecting someone with a fancy sign, instead of saying what she really thinks, which is, I was not expecting someone who wasn't white.
Exactly. I totally felt Twitter warming up at that part.
So I wholly applaud Hallmark for making a move, but they really didn't execute that storyline fully. But it develops from there.
Yeah, exactly. So this is when our two mains lead, and the actor playing the gentleman who she meets is played by actor Ronnie Rowe, who I think gave a very charming, lovely performance throughout this movie. I admit to being kind of a snob when it comes to movies, but if I generally, if an actor is charming and charismatic, I feel like that can pull me in, and this guy absolutely, from the first moment he's on screen, he's just a joy to watch.
A joy to watch. I mean, he's got this smirk on his face throughout the movie that's just genuine and adorable. And I feel like some of the men who play the love interests in these movies, there is no general legitimate adoration for the woman, but I could really feel his love for her, and I think in some of these scripts would be really hard to come across.
Exactly. You watch romantic comedies, and there's always that they find each other annoying at first, or there's how do these characters end up liking each other? But there's a genuine kind of attraction that is unspoken for most of the movie, but it's there, and I find
I
that
want to know
chemistry.
what happened off screen. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I feel like maybe we had some other interests.
I'm sure, and right from when they meet, we
Yes.
have culture clash, starting with the fact that she has apparently never seen a truck.
Oh,
She
yeah.
gets picked. He picks her up in a truck, and she's just like, she does that like classic, I'm upset, but I'm trying not to be that like truck that like, she does that sharp inhale.
Is that kind of the reaction that I had when I went to meet your family for the first time and I was left on the side of a road with a bus ticket, nowhere to go?
I totally remember. I totally thought back to every time that Chelsea has come to visit where I grew up, which is not as small. The population of this town is 112, so it's not that small, but it is very rural. And Chelsea's a born and raised in here in New York City, Brooklyn specifically. So I was watching that going, she's adjusting way too smoothly. She would be like having like a breakdown. She would be like saying like, what do you mean you don't have a cell phone? Are you dying? Like
yeah, there's
that
no
kind of
cell
thing.
phone. There's really bad cell reception in the town too. But of course, this movie wouldn't be a movie or 2 hours long if that. But for the fact that we meet our first blunder, which is that she's gone to the flower studio, or what do you ever call it, a greenhouse, to cut her flowers, which she negotiates far and above what she had promised the mayor of this small town would be what she needed. They pack them all up adorably in the greenhouse, and he takes her to the airport, but his truck gets stuck in the snow.
By a like very small mound of snow that would
Yeah.
have been very easy to get out of.
I mean, you could stomp on it, honestly.
Yeah, it was, and somehow like the snow was perfectly clean. It wasn't muddy or slushy.
Yeah, there's no mud, and by coincidence, not within 2 minutes, the neighbor up the road has come to rescue them and see if they're okay.
Because that is what happens in small towns like this. That is, we are telling the viewing audience who probably lives in a similar place, that is what good small town folk do. They help out their neighbors, whereas in New York you would be stabbed, robbed, and spit on.
Or just left to die in the snow. But anyway, I mean, as I know, it was really touch and go there for like all of 3 minutes, but they do make it out, but not in time for her return flight, which coincidentally, as I may remark before, was the exact same day that she flew in. But we're gonna ignore that. That's magic.
Yeah, adorable. She thought she was gonna leave the same day. So now our character is stuck in small town Alaska.
Shocker! This is always the Hallmark plot twist.
Oh,
if you travel anywhere, you're
get
gonna be
stuck.
stuck.
Gotcha,
Like there's no
gotcha.
traveling anywhere without stuckness ever.
Mhm.
So, spoiler alert: if any movie has you on a plane, it's over.
Right. If you show up for a flight on time, it's getting delayed.
Yeah.
If you're getting a bus somewhere, the bus exploded. You're not
I don't know
getting
about the bus
anywhere.
exploded. That might be for the History Channel more than the Hallmark Channel.
But this sets up my favorite part of this kind of plot is where we have the type A, career driven, never slows down.
She's forced to.
She's forced to as they would say, she's forced to stop and smell the roses.
Right, which is what, I think also this is a nice moment for Hallmark audiences. I think this entire year we've all been forced to stop and smell the roses and, take stock of our lives and what's important to us now more than ever. So for Hallmark to really kick off their season with a movie that, talks to this is really, I think, heartwarming for us all, but also like a little PTSD of
Right.
like, but we're all stopped. Why do I need to stop? And then you start questioning your life choices and you start spiraling out. But then wait for it. There's a village festival to
Yes.
distract you from your COVID spiral. Okay.
Yes.
So don't worry.
An adorable small town Christmas festival,
Yeah.
which honestly reminded me of the Blueberry Festival we attended in
Oh,
Canada with
yes.
some friends of ours.
Where it's really hard to find anything made with blueberries. Ironic.
Exactly. And our lead actress, Julie Gonzalo, who, interestingly enough, was in Christmas with the Cranks as well. So we have
that's true.
a history
She was a
of
blonde
Christmas
in that
movies.
movie, though.
Yes. So we and the festival, you'll see encounter some conflicts, and she springs into action her work as a wedding planner in New York.
Saves that for, well, first
Saves
of all,
it.
sorry, we went way too fast and ahead. She is elected the festival princess, which, really is a high honor in this town, if you want to call it that. And so she's given all these duties, and she seems to do them reluctantly, but every time the tiara shows up, her like eyes light up and she gets excited. So ladies, if you like sparkle, there's sparkle in this movie.
Yes, because who doesn't want to feel like a princess sometimes?
The really fast, angry New York woman sometimes.
Exactly. But now we have the fast-paced New York. And speaking of other characters in this movie that are set out to foil our hero, we have what's her name? Rebecca?
I think so. It's not important, her name.
Yes, she is the. And it's interesting, like you bring up that Julie was a blonde in Christmas with the Cranks, because Rebecca, the conniving blonde woman, who's our main hero's coworker, who's secretly trying to work her way into advancing her own career at our hero's expense. Yes,
that's true. But I also, if I may, and I'm sorry to scatter around to listeners, but going back to the festival. This festival is a multi-day. It's like a 3-day festival with lots of very detailed, specific events. There's a massive map and timeline and all of this stuff. And I just want to pause on this idea that this tiny town spends a ridiculous amount of their December planning this festival every year for 3 days of joy among the same 100 people. When you were in school, there were probably 100 people in your class. Did you want to put this much effort into spending 3 full days with them? Also, they make reference to an elementary school, and in a town of 100 people, really? How many elementary school students are there?
It's probably like a one-room schoolhouse.
Yeah, maybe. I don't mean to poke holes in all the the entire plot from the get, but this, it was adorable that they put all this effort in. They have this holiday craft fair, and there's one town store and all of this other stuff that's I don't know, irrelevant information that you need watching this movie. But what I really think is fascinating is that the entire town has come to this standstill, so much so that she can't even get home until the festival's over because, there's no flights because the entire town is stopped.
Well, and then
who does that?
I feel like that is a unique, at least in movies, that's a uniquely small town thing where they just oh well. Nothing happens for 4 days because we're celebrating this. To me, it's about a sense of community. That's what
cute, but
I think.
In a Hallmark movie though, there's usually one thing. There's the Christmas dance or the Christmas fair or the Christmas cook-off or whatever. It's one thing. But in their first movie, Hallmark put them all in the same movie, and I'm just worried that they've totally blown all their creative ideas. Or listeners, do you think that they have new ideas this year?
What? Well, I feel like if you're kicking off 22 to 23 new original films, you're gonna want to hook people in immediately. So we're throwing your multi-day festival. We're giving Snow Angel
you a biracial
scenes.
Relationship.
Yes. Cause we're starting super woke as well. We've got,
but we're moving slow. I'll just say this compared to other Hallmark movies. The first kiss is the last moment of the scene. So if you're looking for a hot and steamy Hallmark, this isn't it for you.
There's hot and steamy Hallmark.
Well, there's more than the first kiss in the last 30 seconds of the movie.
We're talking 2 kisses,
maybe, or 3. There might be some hand holding.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Well, I know from watching lots of high school comedy drama anime that hand-holding, that's a big deal.
It is a big deal in the Hallmark community.
What I also wanted to ask you, because you're my Hallmark aficionado, Chelsea, I didn't feel granted there it does become an urgent conflict that needs to be addressed towards the end. I don't want to spoil it too much for anyone who hasn't seen this yet, but it lasts all of 5 minutes. There's not when you're writing a screenplay, there's a real Dark Night of the Soul, it's called, but it doesn't last that long, and it's solved pretty quickly. Is that a common trait of Hallmark as well?
Yeah, they all get wrapped up real quick at the end, and in a nice, perfect, neat bow.
Like a present.
Yeah. So it's it takes quite a bit of effort to get there, and all the obstacles, and then the entire rest of the movie happens in all of 5 minutes. That's definitely like a troubling trait of Hallmark movies. Hashtag troubling trait. Because like I think that's the part that like I wanted to see more of. So I guess to give a little bit more away, after serving as the town's Jingle Bell Princess, and she's in the Snow Angel contest and the Snowman contest, and she's seen the Northern Lights in a adorable romantic moment that could have gone way further than it did.
Yeah.
The
lots of magical stuff.
Moments. Nothing happens though. And then, she makes this big deal about how she's got to get home to hand off the Jingle Bell Bride bouquet. And of course, her love interest makes it happen for her and gets the plane off the ground, 12 hours before it was supposed to. And she gets back to New York, delivers the Jingle Bell bouquet. We do not resolve, though, if she has vanquished Blondie in her quest to take over her job or not. We do find out that she declines a big promotion for her success in getting the Jingle Bell bouquet back. And then, in the last minute of the movie, her love interest appears in New York. He has trashed his entire life in Alaska to come back to New York and be with her. And I just want to ask you, ladies and gentlemen, after spending 3 days with someone without ever kissing them, would you move your entire life to the other side of a country? I don't think so.
Well, let me also ask you this, because that does seem like a very impulsive kind of decision. Like if we had a friend that was doing something like that, we might go, hey, can we talk about this for a second? But in movies, that kind of thing is a grand romantic gesture. I always think of Titanic, because Jack and Rose knew each other for like 3 days, maybe less than that.
Everything comes back to the Titanic with you,
and
doesn't
she
it?
talks and she thinks about him for her entire life.
Okay, maybe, but that's also
I'm talking
a fictional
about the
story.
I'm talking about love stories in movies specifically. There's intense feelings
I do think
that
that's
lead people
true,
to do crazy things.
But I've seen some other incredible rom-coms this past week just in preparation for my Hallmark, Christmas spectacular. And yes, you're right that like people do a lot of crazy things for love, but I think you have to have at least had the first kiss to know that like that's the person that you want to make your life changes for. And maybe I'm remiss, maybe I'm not a romantic, I don't know, but I just think you need to know a little bit more than I've like spent 3 days with them in a platonic, intense relationship in a tiny town.
For somebody who watches as much Duggars and Counting On with Jill, I'm surprised that you wouldn't think people make big, grand romantic decisions without physical contact.
It's not just that. It's the length of time and physical contact, right?
I see.
So but I am also critical of the Duggars and any other quiverful movement folk who, court and get married without having any physical intimacy with their partner. But those courtships are like 3 to 6 months, right? That we're talking about the difference between that and like a 3-day, I just met this woman in Alaska.
Right. So,
and we're talking about moving, right, across the entire country. It's not like she lives in Seattle, guys. She lives in New York, and he lives in rural Alaska.
But as we come to learn from the movie, he has ties to New York. So it's maybe not as, it's in his own way, he's on a personal journey himself that includes her.
Okay, and spoiler alert, he did move to Alaska within like say the last year or so to help his aunt who had just lost her husband around her farm and around the Jingle Bell planting and growth and all of that, which is lovely. But even more to the point, then he's basically like ditching his family and a woman who arguably really needs his help in rural Alaska to come to New York City to spend time with a woman who's made zero time or effort for her own family in the years that she's lived there. And then she's just going to trash a promotion she's been working for years, guys. That's insane.
Right. But what the movie tells you is that she's realized what really matters. And
okay. I'm sure there's not a single listener out there who wouldn't say the same thing about their time in quarantine this year. Like, yes, I have figured out what
Christmas in quarantine.
Yeah, I have figured out what really matters to me. Like, I was brought great joy this weekend carving a pumpkin. I haven't carved a pumpkin since I was a child. Spacing out birthday celebrations so that I could really have like a full week of birthday, and that's awesome. And I really don't want to go back to my life of like having 6 parties in a day to go to and sleeping 4 hours a day. But at the same time, there's a difference between that and turning down something that you've fought your entire life for.
I do agree with you. And in real life, and in real life, if I saw someone doing this, I'd be like, can we talk about this first? I would definitely say that.
Like, I think there was a way for her to slow her life down, still get the guy, and take the promotion. I just don't like that Hallmark teaches women the lesson of, like, you've got to settle.
Right.
You know, I think you really, I hate the term have it all, but I think you can have what you want. And, you know, it's clear that she wanted this promotion. And not to mention, she was going to move to London, guys. This isn't like...
Yeah, that's across the ocean.
It's far away, but I think it's also not, you know, all that far compared to Alaska.
Right.
Right? Like, she flew to Alaska in a day. You can fly to London in 5 hours, you know?
Exactly. What I think, and how I feel, and I'll be interested to see how I feel after watching all of these movies this holiday season, is they really focus on the what's feeling good in that moment. But if you think about it for another second, you might start to think, what the fuck are they doing? You know?
Yeah. Also, I think just one other thing I want to mention is, like, magically in these movies, these people are in whatever town they're in because they got there however they got there, and they always have clothes in their size. And as like, you know, for those of you who don't know, Will and I, like, Will is very tall.
I'm 6'7" and kind of not obese, but I'm heavy set.
And I'm I don't know, an average sized woman. I don't know, slightly larger than an average sized woman, but still, like, the idea that the town that has one store with like 3 coats on the rack has like the perfect jeggings that fit the main character just mystifies me every time. And I really want Hallmark to get into that, guys. You know, I really want them to be like, to have it be a problem that someone can't fit in the clothes.
Well, that would be pretty hilarious.
Like, if this year we went with a biracial relationship, can we, like, next year go into like some size, you know, issues?
Right.
Yeah.
That could be a very interesting thing maybe that was too broad comedically, but practical thoughts bring it up. To wrap this one up before we go into our second our second film of the holiday season, on a scale of 0 to 5, where would you rate this, and what are your kind of final thoughts on this movie?
I'm going to give this one a 4 in Hallmark land. I think it was unique. It was different. I was engaged the whole time. I didn't feel a visceral need to go on Facebook. That's what I would give it. What about yourself?
I'd honestly agree. I would give it 4 out of 5 because I was the kind of like big city finds the charm in small town. That's a story I kind of
Will
enjoy.
Likes that.
And I'm gonna say I'm gonna say what really makes me rank it so high is because the lead actors do such a great job of really bringing the charm of these characters out.
Yeah, I feel like they're real actors who've been in other things, as opposed to, and no offense to Candice Bergen, but like these weren't people who are just in all the Hallmark movies that you see every year. These were like different folks. And I know we sort of rambled a bit with this first episode, but I think Will and I are going to try to come up with a little bit more of a structure in terms of talking about the plot and stuff going forward. So I just wanted, for listeners who are like a little weary of like, do I want to dive into this podcast or not? I assure you, it's only going to get better.
Exactly.
Like a fine wine, so does a Hallmark movie age.
Exactly. Is there and where can people find us on social media?
Oh, at Hallmark After Show 2020.
And that's on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you're listening to this, you can also listen to my podcast, Between Awesome and Disaster, wherever you get your podcasts as well. Thanks for checking this out. Thanks for doing this show with me, sweetie.
Of course. And I also, just one last thing before we go. We are going to have some special guests join us throughout this season to discuss some specific Hallmark movies, and we're going to have some callers. So if you, a lonely listener out there, are interested in engaging with us on one of the movies this year, please do tweet at us or DM us or however the cool kids TikTok us, and we'd love to like have a coffee and chat.
Awesome. I can't wait to talk to those people. That'll be very awesome. Yes, we are very easy to reach on social media. I'm also on Twitter at Comic Will Carry, and you're on Twitter at
Chelsea Connor. I got in early, guys. I was one of the first 100 users of Twitter.
High five. All right. Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and we will hopefully hear from you next time on the Hallmark 2020 After Show.
See y'all soon.